part 2 of the new telephone exchange. Kind of the top view of the overhead cable rack. Actually the overhead superstructure. And I am on top of an 8-foot ladder. We're looking down on the 7-foot frame. I have run some of the power cable and I am preparing to tie it in, or what is referred to as sew it in. So I just slopped it in here, used wax string just to tie off some things, and I did it really sloppily because I'm cutting it all off. I'm going to do it right. And then we got a 45-degree dropping down to the lower rack. Then the leads over to the fuse panel and the ground bar. So I'll try to position the camera to where you can see me lace 1 or 2 of the straps using wax string. The environment I'm working in is kind of low clearance, so it's a little more difficult to work with, but I'll try to come up with a good position. We will have enough cable on this cable rack to fill it up 5 inches wide. There might be a second layer. Over here by the camera, we're going to have a lot of cable because the main frame is heading off over that direction, and those cables will be ran later. So I have my cables going to the what's called a waterfall or 45-degree drop. And again, they're just temporarily tied. The Bell System telco standard is you run a battery and a ground, a battery and a ground, battery and ground. You never put 2 grounds together or 2 batteries together. And this is how the Bell System and Automatic Electric and some of the other manufacturers done their cables. And it is, power cable is still being done this way in the real telcos, even in 2024. And these are 6-gauge wires and a 10-gauge wire, which is massive overkill for what we're doing. But all of the cable connectors we have for everything is for 6-gauge. So we just got a 100-foot of 6-gauge and using it, even though we will never, ever get even remotely close to that as a load. But again, that's fine. When I get to the lower part, if I remember, I'll take and set the camera down. That'll be a little easier to see what's going on. and I'm sewing every other strap because it's not necessary. And maybe depending on how this all turns out, I might do it. Since this is a private collector installation, I tend to do a little nicer job than if this was an actual for pay by a telco, because they want it done right, but they don't care if you sew every strap or not. And in big offices, that becomes a real pain to sew cables for long distances. And then I've got more cable to run, so I'm not going to dead end my string. I'm just going to let it sit there. And since I'm making a 90 and a 90, I think I'll go ahead and sew that strap. If it was, again, a commercial AT&T facility or CenturyLink, something like that, it wouldn't really matter. I've been in offices that I installed in, as well as a CO tuck in, that the cable rack was 18 to 20 inches deep of cable by either a foot wide or 2 foot wide, depending on the cable rack and when it was actually installed. And they're impressive to see. So far, I don't need what I've called an Evans needle, but I do have one. This is a needle used for going in between the cables and grabbing your string. Since these cables are still loose, that's not really needed. And most of your non-power cable, they put in cable rack that's what's called panned and horn. They have horns on the side in plastic or aluminum pan, and you just throw the cables in, you don't sew them. Unless it's been an existing run that was sewed in, then you have no choice but to sew it in. And I'll show a close-up of this when I'm finished. So this is the last right now. We'll have more cable to run. There'll be ringing generators to run, and so that's why I don't dead end the cables or dead end the string until I'm finished, because otherwise I just have to piece out, and that's a bummer. So we'll do one up here close to the camera and hope that it turns out. And I already started my string prior to turning the camera on. And depending on the central office and how many hours you spend doing this, your hands will be black from the wax and then all of the dust that's in the air and on the equipment and so forth. And the wax is hard to get off without using some type of a chemical to eat through it. And this wax string is technically called 9-cord. I don't know if that's the actual legal name or not. I haven't ever ordered it outside of the people I worked for. small cable like this is easy to work with. When you get into the cable that's 1 gauge, 4 gauge, 4/0, 350, 750, you have to use rubber mallets to form it in place. You can't bend it in these tight radiuses. I'm sure this kind of stuff is boring to most people, but I'll just show you a little bit of the progress. Right here where I'm sewing this down, we'll probably have 4 or 5 layers of 25 pair cables on it. And if I think of it later on in the video, I might try to remember to shoot a quick picture of it. And this is part 2 of probably 3 or 4 parts of this installation. I'll show a couple of starting stitches on this 45-degree drop. This will be probably a fairly boring part of the video, but please stay with us. It'll get more exciting as time goes on. I figure this will probably be a 10 to 12 minute, maybe slightly longer clip of some of the cable work, and then we'll have the making it work. And the original wiring of the automatic electric step switch, there's a link below on part 1, and I'll try to put it on this one as well, that shows or tells you where the wiring phase of it was. So if you're interested in watching that, you can. There's not much wiring to do on this here. I mean, there's lots to do, but it's usually pretty boring, and I don't think too many people care to watch that. Please like and subscribe to the video. Also, comments are welcome. I'll show this. That's what it looks like on the top without the string wrapped around. I'll show the finished product when I get them all sewed down. Nothing changes. So I need to terminate the ground wires to the ground bar and then finish sewing that. So here's the top of the 7-foot part. I have the grounds terminated on the ground bar. This is an integrated system with the return/ground combined. We have on the rear aisle, the top left is a D4 channel bank, and then on the right side is a rotary line switch for the coin phones. Coin trunks are below that, and then we have a circuit breaker panel that will be the distribution from the rectifiers and battery to the equipment in the building. And then we have the rear of the Nortel rectifiers. They're also installing 2 Definity systems for some type of trunking. I'm not sure exactly what the details are yet. This is not part of my project. Front of this aisle. So the D4 channel bank is over on the right side, and the rotary line switches are here on the left side. And then we have the Nortel rectifier. And then below will be the batteries. Back of the touch tone converters. This will be shared between the Stromberg XY and the AE step system. I've already wired one of the cables up for the AE system. View of the touchtone converters. I have the step switches now mounted on the switch frame. Now the adjustments and making sure everything's nice and tight. And then after that, we still have some more wiring to do, not much, and then I got the top shelf of selectors to put on. I'll make a quick call through the step system. We do not have the ringing supply connected yet. That's a work in progress and will be happening shortly. I don't have any telephones locally, and since I'm here installing the switching equipment, I'm not involved in the telephone plant itself. So I'll make a quick call through this just to show that, yeah, we got most of it working, and that will be the end of this trip. And there'll be another time that I'll come out and finish it, and then we'll be working on the XY. So I made a couple calls through the machine. We have more selectors to install on the top shelf. Those will be the incoming calls from Definity PBX and from CNET. I'll give a quick close-up of a 100 line group. I've just managed to get the last couple of line finders that was not working reliably to now find the line reliably. We have the plunger line switch and then 2 rotary line switches. I hope to have the 2 rotary line switches operational today. I need to add 1 component, and that should be working. The plunger switch has got a mechanical problem that will not be addressed during this visit. And then we had the connectors, and there are more connectors on their way. When I wired this in my office, all of the gray cable was just ran temporarily. This was a connectorized office, so now everything is tied in. And the final view is some of the overhead and cable rack. This was the miscellaneous aisle with the power and other equipment. Please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Thanks. And this is the end of the initial part 1 and 2. There will be, I guess I'll call part 3 within the next 2 to 3 months.